Hey guys, so I wanted to hop back on to tell kind of the story of my last week. I had some things pop up that led me to this book. I think that it might be an important story for me to tell, or an important story for me to remember down the road when I look back on this whole process. So I want to document it before the details slip away. For context, I am currently a stay-at-home mom. My husband runs his own business, which I help with, but primarily I'm with my two kids. They are about to be 4 and 2 in April. My 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old, goes to school half days right now. So Monday last week, I picked my son up from school like normal. We came home and we were eating lunch at the table, and I got a call from my sister that my brother-in-law was being life flighted to a big hospital near me, and could she bring me her kids? She has 3 boys. Of course, I immediately said yes, and I could tell that she had just kind of gotten that news. She was processing like what to do logistically. She lives about an hour and a half from me, and she was already in the car with the kids. I didn't know at the time, but she thought she was going to their local emergency room originally, and then the decision was made to life flight him to a larger hospital. So she had already packed up the kids to go to the emergency room. She understood that there was already a problem. She was more coming to terms with the fact when she called me that the problem was maybe more serious than they originally thought. So I just immediately said yes, and again, I'm just eating lunch with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, so they are no help when it comes to me managing my emotions at this exact moment. My husband was busy, didn't answer the phone. I tried calling him a couple times. I tried calling one of my good friends just to talk to another adult about it, because I knew I didn't want to call my parents or anyone like that yet. I didn't want to freak them out until my sister had a chance to call them or whatever. Well, eventually I got a hold of my husband. He was like, let me know if you need me to come home from the thing that he was doing, his obligation. But eventually my sister called me back, and she was like, okay. She's had more chance to process everything by then, and she'd also talked to her husband again and the medic who was with him waiting for the helicopter. She was feeling better about the situation, I guess, to just explain it simply. But she was still slightly kind of flustered over everything because, again, why would they life flight him if it wasn't a super scary situation? By the time she called me back, she was processing more of the logistics, and she realized she'd only packed 1 more bottle for her 7-month-old baby, and that she didn't have anything else with her. She was like, I don't know how many diapers I have. I just threw the diaper bag in the car. I was like, yeah, don't worry about it. I will order some formula. I will order some diapers. I just did a quick Instacart order. When her boys got here, they helped me kind of decide on some snacks and treats to add to the order as well. The kids were really calm. I don't know how much they overheard of her talking on the phone on the car ride. She has a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 7-month-old. So the older 2 kids were really chill. They were just excited to see their cousins and to play. And so that's what we did. I got the Instacart order in, and then I just turned my attention to hanging out with the boys, making everyone kind of feel distracted, I guess, from the situation. My kids didn't really understand what was happening either. Then when my husband got home, he helped immensely with the kids. We had a bit of a rough night with the baby because we've never watched him before, just the 2 of us. Eventually, my sister brought me her car and took our car because they ended up transferring my brother-in-law to a whole nother hospital 2 hours away, and she wanted us to have the car with all the car seats and stuff. But by then things were much less emergent. They just were transferring him, essentially get him to a better fit surgeon-wise. He needed surgery. The situation was very serious, but luckily, like where he injured himself, he didn't hurt anything like vital. So they needed to patch him back up. There was some nerve and muscle damage, but nothing life-threatening at all. So there was a better surgeon in another town, and they did another medical transport, but this time in an ambulance. And she followed driving, and by the time she was here dropping off the car, it was almost bedtime, and her sister-in-law, my brother-in-law's sister, was with her as well. So she had someone, and her kids were all kind of settled for the night. We'd figured out pajamas for her boys, who came with nothing, and all was well. But we still weren't sure if he was going to have surgery that night, what the recovery would look like, and how long we'd have the kids or whatever. We all went to bed and woke up to text message that the surgery had been done and everything looked good, and that they thought he'd be out of the hospital by noon. So this was last Tuesday. I took my 3-year-old to school on Tuesday morning. My husband was here to help that day, thank goodness. And then when I got home, we tried to get outside, get our minds off of everything, and we did FaceTime with my sister and my brother-in-law, who were like in a recovery room or something. And then my husband ended up taking all my nephews to like a spot along the road where it made sense to meet them on their way home after he was discharged from the hospital. And so we had the boys for approximately 24 hours. Everyone was like happy to be here. The cousins had a great time playing. It wasn't stressful from this perspective of like I was busy. I'm not used to having 5 boys to take care of. And we're out of kind of the baby stage at my house. So that was a lot of extra work, having her 7-month-old. But ultimately things could not have gone better, I guess. When you think about having a life flight medical emergency and then to everything being essentially solved or resolved within 24 hours. It was wild to me. This entire time I was in contact with my parents and my grandmother. Also had a few other people checking in on me. One of my neighbors knew what was going on because I borrowed some clothes from her for my 7-year-old nephew. People were checking in on me like, hey, how is everything? And I just felt like I was, like this entire situation kind of overtook my life for those 24 hours, I guess. And I'm so glad that I was able to help. I'm so glad that location-wise it worked out for me to be able just to take the boys. I'm so glad that, work-wise, I was just available and was already home with my own kids. A lot of things fell into place that day to make my sister's life easier, and I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for Instacart, that I could just say hey, I need formula and diapers now. Tuesday afternoon, after my husband got back from dropping off the nephews, or swapping cars, whatever, we tried to be productive. We tried to get back to things that needed to get done around the house, or whatever. I had a to-do list for the week that had been completely set aside for this situation. And then Wednesday, I woke up. My husband had to work outside of the house again. I took my son to school, and I felt I don't know how to describe Wednesday except that I experienced extreme executive dysfunction. I would have a thought in my head I should set out chicken for dinner. That thought would just sit in my head for hours before I actually could bring myself to do something. I honestly can't even tell you what I did on Wednesday morning while my 3-year-old was at school. I did go and pick him up, and I came back home and fed the boys lunch, and then it wasn't even tasks, things that most people would be happy to procrastinate. It was also I remember at one point I was oh, a soda sounds really good, but I didn't have any in the fridge, and I like to drink one cold. I was okay, I'm gonna go put a Coke in the fridge to enjoy later, and literally never did that the entire day. And when my husband got home a few hours later, I was like, I set out chicken for dinner, but that chicken is still frozen because I set it out like hours after I should have, you know? And it was like my whole day was completely dysfunctional. And I'm not like that. I am very like on top of things. Even though the boys were gone and the stress of that whole situation with my brother-in-law was over, I just couldn't manage on Wednesday. And I wasn't feeling my best, but mostly I just remember kind of feeling like a zombie. Like I was just sitting around either like staring at nothing or scrolling on my phone. Like I just couldn't bring myself to do anything useful. After my husband got home on Wednesday, basically he just took over with our kids and I went to bed. I woke up on Thursday and I was still feeling, you know, the pain in my shoulders and neck and headachy a little bit. And I said, you know what, I think I should go see the PT today, my physical therapist. I don't go all the time. I don't usually pre-plan PT appointments. At that time on Wednesday and Thursday, in my mind, I was like, well, I'm obviously like sore because we had the baby and I was holding the baby and I'm not used to holding a baby anymore because my 2-year-old, like obviously I pick him up as needed, but mostly he doesn't want that. And so I was like, it was rocking the baby, it was holding the baby so much that has me like so stressed out and like I can just feel it in my shoulders and my neck. So it was at PT then that she recommended this book. She brought it up kind of very nonchalant, like, I don't know if you'll be into this book. It's about the connection between your mind and your body and how like some types of chronic pain, like there's this connection that you could potentially resolve. She's like, I haven't read the whole book. You should check it out. I'll send you a link. And like we probably talked about it for less than 30 seconds. She sent me the link. I can't remember when I actually like sat down and ordered it. It showed up yesterday. So the book came in the mail yesterday. I read the first chapter last night, the second chapter this morning, and I just finished the third chapter. I wanted to record this story because it's so obvious to me sitting here right this second that the stress I went through last week with my brother-in-law, and again, it wasn't really my stress. It kind of turned my life upside down for those 24 hours I was caring for their kids. And obviously I was worried about my brother-in-law. I was worried for my sister. My husband, you know, the next day when I was having all this executive dysfunction, he's like, you're just stressed. Like that was a very stressful thing you just went through. And in my head, I was like, yeah, but like it wasn't my stress. Nothing bad happened to me. Like we just had their kids for a while. And he's like, yeah, but that was stressful. Like, and you were communicating with your family and trying to manage everyone. And I'm like, yeah, like I hear what you're saying. And we had had this entire conversation before I went to the physical therapist. And I'm telling you right now, like, I don't know if she brought up this book and he and I hadn't already had this conversation, I don't know if it would have clicked for me. But right now I'm realizing, like, obviously there was a connection. In my mind at the time, I had rationalized it as, oh, I had been holding the baby a lot. So this is this physical pain. It's from holding a baby. Looking back on it through the lens of this book, I'm like, wait, no, it wasn't the baby. The baby is tiny compared to my 2-year-old who I hold all the time, not for as long. It was the stress of the situation. And so I think this whole story, this is the point of this video. This story, like what happened to us last week, I think it really prepped me for wanting to dive into this book. And, you know, maybe if my PT had brought this up on a different day, I would have been open to it. I do not know, truly. But I might not have gone to the PT. You know what I mean? Like, it was like all these things lined up last week and kind of led me to this moment. And it's kind of crazy that within a week of this stressful event, and then the like executive dysfunction and physical symptoms that manifested, and then the going to physical therapy. PT recommends this book, and now here I am, you know, a week later digging into this book already. Like, I feel like I'm a completely changed woman in the 24 hours since I've read this book. Not because anything has changed yet for me physically. I'm literally experiencing pain right now, but I just feel like I'm primed and ready to receive the information that the author has to give. And I just don't know if things had happened any differently, if I would be ready for this information or open to trying this program, as she calls it. All of this to say, I wanted to document this moment before I forgot any more of the details, because being mentally prepared for this book is necessary. And maybe if my pain were more extreme, or if I was just more of a person open to like maybe more in touch with my emotions and stuff than I am, maybe this would have occurred to me sooner. I'm not sure. I'd literally never heard of any of this before last week. I'd never heard of mind-body science. I'd never heard of like the psychological connection. I think I would have thought it was like very hippy-dippy, like hoaxy, I don't know. But sitting here today, I feel like a completely different person and just ready to dive in. So I guess if you are doubting yourself, know that I would be doubting myself too if it hadn't been for all the events of last week kind of stacking up as they did. And I really genuinely believe that like it might take a situation like I just lived through to kind of get you on this track. So if you're not there yet, like maybe like take a beat and really stop and think about when your symptoms are flaring, and if you can connect them to any stress in your life, even if it doesn't feel that big, because mine often do not feel big. Rarely, I would say, because I do not live a stressful life right now, other than the fact that I have small kids. I cannot point to anything really that I would have thought of as a trigger. I guess I just encourage you to like kind of pay attention and then maybe come back to this idea in the future once you've kind of seen the connection between stresses and your chronic symptoms. And if I haven't said this before, like she talks about all sorts of different types of chronic symptoms. It doesn't have to just be like headaches or back pain or fibromyalgia or anything like that. It could also be like stomach issues and intestinal issues. It could be anxiety, panic attack type disorders. It really could be anything where there's not any obvious like cure, you know, like if you have an ear infection, you should go get antibiotics. But if you've kind of followed the path of traditional medicine and you're kind of at a standstill, I mean, I'm working with a neurologist right now and I'm trying some different like headache medications, but I just haven't seen consistent results with those. And what I'm realizing is probably true is the results of my medicine are inconsistent because I am not traditional migraines, I guess. At some point I want to do a video where I talk more about like all of my chronic pain problems over the course of my life and like what led me to this point, more big picture. But I do think capturing this like week in my life was very important. Anyway, we shall talk more when I'm done with chapter 4, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.